My name is Iris, and for 35 years, I was what you might call the bedrock of my family. I was the reliable one, the steady one, the one who never caused any trouble. This was, of course, a delicate and polite euphemism. What I really was the family's unpaid intern, their on-call therapist, their emergency line of credit, and their default holiday planner. The role was assigned to me so early in life that I never thought to question the job description. But then my brother, the perennially celebrated golden child, demanded my life savings to fund his fantasy destination wedding. And in that moment, the bedrock finally cracked. They had no idea the earthquake that was coming. They expected a gift, and I gave them one, but it wasn't the one they wanted. It was the one they had earned, a meticulously documented invoice for 30 years of service. Before I tell you exactly how I crafted the book that ended my role as the family doormat and finally closed the doors on the favor bank, I'd love it if you could let me know where in the world you're watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you've ever felt like your family's emotional and financial support animal, go ahead and hit that like button, because this is a story about balancing the books. If you're new here and stories about finding your own strength are your thing, consider subscribing to join our community. You are not alone. It all started, as these things often do, in the quiet, unassuming landscape of childhood. My brother, Liam, was born with a sunbeam in his pocket. He was charming, effervescent, and magnetically clumsy. He could trip over air and land in a pile of adoration. I, on the other hand, was born 2 years earlier, seemingly with a tiny calculator and a list of responsibilities clutched in my fist. I was quiet, observant, and I learned quickly that the easiest way to navigate our household was to become invisible, to anticipate needs and solve problems before they became loud enough to disrupt the orbit around Liam. The first major entry in what I would later call the favor bank was logged when I was 8 years old. Our grandmother, a woman whose memory I still cherish as a beacon of quiet strength, had given my mother a delicate porcelain music box. It was an antique from her own mother, a fragile thing of painted roses and a tinkling, ethereal melody. It sat on the mantelpiece, a sacred object we were forbidden to touch. One rainy Tuesday, while our mother was on the phone, Liam decided he absolutely had to see the tiny ballerina inside spin one more time. His reach was eager, his grip was unsteady. The crash echoed through the house, a sound so sharp and final it felt like a clap of thunder. I saw the splintered wood and the shards of porcelain scattered across the hearth like fallen snow. I saw the look of pure, unadulterated panic on Liam's 6-year-old face. And in that split second, I made a calculation. If Liam was blamed, he would wail, my mother would get a migraine, and the entire house would be plunged into a miserable, tear-soaked drama for the rest of the day. If I was blamed, I would get a stern talking to, maybe lose my television privileges for a week. But the storm would pass quickly. I was built to weather it. He was not. So when my mother rushed into the room, her face pale with dread, I stepped forward and said the 5 words that would define the next 3 decades of our relationship. It was me. I'm sorry. My mother's disappointment was a heavy cloak she draped over my shoulders, while she knelt to scoop a sobbing Liam into her arms, murmuring, "It's okay, sweetie, it's okay, it was just an accident." I took the punishment, a week confined to my room after school, and Liam was given ice cream to soothe his shattered nerves. That night, sitting on the floor of my bedroom, I remember my grandmother coming in. She didn't say anything about the music box. She just sat with me, her hand on my head, and said, "Your spine is a beautiful thing, Iris. It was made to hold you up straight and tall. Don't ever let anyone teach you to bend it into a shape that feels comfortable for them." I nodded, but I didn't understand. I thought I had done something noble. I had kept the peace. I didn't realize I had just made the first of many down payments on a lifetime of emotional servitude. The pattern, once established, became ingrained in our family's DNA. By the time we were teenagers, it was second nature. Liam was the dreamer, and I was the facilitator. His dreams, however, were becoming increasingly expensive. When he turned 16, the primary topic of conversation in our house became his desperate, all-consuming need for a car. Not just any car, but a slightly sporty, used convertible he'd seen on a local lot. It was, in his words, essential for his social survival. My parents, Richard and Brenda, sighed and wrung their hands. They wanted to give their boy the world, but their finances were perpetually strained. They had a knack for living just slightly beyond their means, a trait Liam had inherited with gusto. Meanwhile, I had been working since I was 14. I bussed tables at a local diner, my hands perpetually smelling of grease and coffee, and I squirreled away every dollar into a savings account labeled college fund. It was my own quiet dream, a ticket to a life beyond our small town. A life of my own making. One evening, my parents called me into the kitchen for a family meeting. That phrase always sent a jolt of anxiety through me. It never meant good news for my schedule or my wallet. They sat at the table, their faces arranged in masks of strained seriousness. My father cleared his throat. "Iris, honey, you know we love you and Liam equally." This was the standard opening for any request that would prove the exact opposite. "And you know that a family helps each other out. We're a team." My mother picked up the thread, her voice syrupy with manufactured warmth. "Liam is having a really hard time. All his friends have cars. It's affecting his confidence, and we found a way to solve it as a family." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I already knew where this was going. They explained their plan. They would take $3,000 from my college fund to buy the car for Liam. It wasn't a gift from me to him, they assured me. It was a temporary family reallocation of assets. They would pay it back, of course. A little bit each month, my father promised, looking me straight in the eye. "You won't even notice it. And think of how happy it will make your brother." Liam, who had been strategically absent for the initial pitch, was called in for the final push. He came in, his face a perfect portrait of boyish hope. "Please, Irie, it would mean everything to me. I'll even drive you wherever you want to go." The pressure was immense, a physical weight in the room. I was being asked to trade my future for his present, and to do it with a smile. To refuse would be to declare myself selfish, unloving, not a team player. I looked at their three expectant faces, a united front of familial entitlement. I thought about the long, sweaty hours at the diner, the homework I'd done on my break, the social events I'd missed. And then I looked at my brother's hopeful eyes. I folded. "Okay," I whispered. The relief in the room was palpable. I was praised for my maturity, my generosity. Liam hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. The next day, he had the car. The promised repayments, of course, never materialized. The first month, the excuse was a big utility bill. The second, it was an unexpected dental expense for my mom. After the third month, no one bothered with excuses anymore. It was simply forgotten, an inconvenient detail that was easier to ignore. I never got driven anywhere, either. Liam's car was perpetually filled with his laughing friends, heading to parties I was never invited to, paid for with gas money I sometimes loaned him. The $3,000 just vanished. It became another silent entry in the ledger I kept in my head, another proof point that in our family, my needs were negotiable and Liam's were not. My depleted college fund meant that the prestigious out-of-state university I had dreamed of was no longer an option. Instead, I enrolled in a solid state college nearby, commuting from home for the first year to save money. I chose a major in graphic design, finding solace in the clean lines and objective principles of art. There was a right way and a wrong way to balance a page, a logic to color theory that felt reassuringly stable. Liam, unsurprisingly, went to an expensive private university 2 states away, his tuition cobbled together by my parents, taking out loans that they would complain about for years to come. His life, as documented on social media, was a whirlwind of themed parties, prestigious-sounding clubs, and exotic spring break trips. I, on the other hand, was juggling a full course load with 2 part-time jobs to pay for my supplies and save up for an apartment. One particular March, Liam's spring break plans involved a week-long trip to Cancun with his then-girlfriend, a girl named Tiffany who seemed to share his allergy to fiscal responsibility. The problem was Tiffany's family. Her parents were going out of town the same week, and they needed someone to look after her 2 younger siblings, a pair of hyperactive terrors aged 7 and 9. Their regular sitter was unavailable. Tiffany refused to cancel her trip. And Liam, ever the hero, declared that he would find a solution. That solution, it turned out, was me. The phone call came from Liam, his voice wheedling and impossibly charming. "Irie, you're a lifesaver, literally. Tiffany was about to break up with me. You're so good with kids. They'll love you. It's just for 5 days. Please? I'll owe you big time." I had my own midterms to study for. I had a massive design portfolio due that week, the cornerstone of my semester's grade. "Liam, I can't. I have my finals." "Come on, you can study when they're asleep," he said, as if a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old had a predictable early bedtime. "It'll be quiet. Think of it as a little study retreat. Plus, Tiffany's parents will pay you." The mention of payment was the hook, and he knew it. I was perpetually broke. "How much?" I asked, already feeling the familiar pull of resignation. $200, he said, with a flourish. $200 for 5 days of round-the-clock childcare was, of course, a ridiculously low-ball offer. But to my 20-year-old self, it sounded like a fortune. I agreed. The week was a masterclass in chaos. The children, far from being the angels Liam had described, were a duo of sugar-fueled destruction. They drew on the walls with permanent marker, tried to give the cat a bath in the toilet, and considered bedtime to be a vague suggestion rather than a rule. I survived on caffeine and adrenaline, snatching 20-minute blocks of study time while they were mesmerized by cartoons. I was exhausted, stressed, and my portfolio was suffering. On the final day, as I was practically sweeping the kids into their parents' arms, Tiffany's mother handed me a crumpled wad of bills. I smoothed them out in the car. It was $120. When I called Liam in Cancun to ask about the discrepancy, he laughed it off. "Oh yeah, she said something about docking pay because you let the kids eat too much junk food. Bummer. Hey, I gotta go. They're doing a tequila tasting. Thanks again, sis. You're the best." He hung up. I sat in my car, the smell of stale chicken nuggets and kids' shampoo clinging to my clothes, and cried. I nearly failed my design final. My professor pulled me aside, concerned. "Iris, this isn't your best work. It's rushed. Is everything okay?" I just nodded, too tired and humiliated to explain that I had traded my academic standing for my brother's chance to do body shots in Mexico. That favor didn't just have a monetary value. It had an academic one. It was another debit, another sacrifice laid at the altar of Liam's happiness. After college, I moved into a tiny apartment with a friend and threw myself into my career. I was meticulous, hardworking, and creative. I built a reputation for being reliable, that word again, and slowly, painstakingly, started to build a life for myself. I paid off my student loans. I started rebuilding my savings. Most importantly, I was building good credit. A good credit score was like a superpower to me. It was a tangible measure of my responsibility, a golden key to a future where I wasn't dependent on anyone. Liam, meanwhile, had graduated and was flitting from one amazing opportunity to the next. These opportunities rarely lasted more than 6 months and never seemed to involve a steady paycheck. After a particularly dramatic flame-out with a roommate, he decided he needed his own place. The problem was, his credit score was a wasteland, ravaged by late payments on credit cards and an unpaid cell phone bill that had gone to collections. No landlord in their right mind would rent to him. This precipitated another family meeting over the phone. "He'll be on the street, Iris," my mother cried. her voice trembling with manufactured hysteria. "He's got nowhere to go. You have such good credit. You've always been so responsible. The landlord just needs a co-signer. It's just a formality." I felt a familiar, sickening lurch. "Mom, co-signing is not a formality. It means I'm legally responsible for the rent if he doesn't pay." "Of course he'll pay," my father boomed from an extension line. "He's your brother. He wouldn't do that to you. You have to have a little faith." It was a masterfully executed pincer movement of guilt and shame. They made it sound as if my refusal to entangle myself legally in Liam's financial irresponsibility was a deep, personal betrayal. I was being asked to bet my financial stability on my brother's character, a character which had, to date, provided no evidence of being a sound investment. I tried to hold my ground. "I'm not comfortable with that. I can help him look for a place with a more flexible landlord, or I can lend him a little money for a bigger security deposit." "He doesn't need a little money," my mother snapped. "He needs a signature. Why do you have to be so difficult? It's just a signature. It costs you nothing." But it wasn't just a signature. It was my name. It was my hard-won financial identity. My friend and roommate, Sarah, was sitting beside me on the couch, listening to my side of the conversation. She was furiously shaking her head, mouthing the word, "No, no, no." But the pressure was mounting. Liam got on the phone, his voice small and wounded. "I thought you believed in me, Irie. I'm really trying to get my life together this time. I just need a little help to get started." It was the 1-2 punch. My mother's panic and my brother's performance of pathetic vulnerability. It was brutally effective. Against my better judgment, against Sarah's frantic hand signals, against every rational thought in my head, I caved. I met Liam at the leasing office the next day and signed the documents, a cold dread pooling in my gut. For the first 3 months, everything was fine. Then, on the 4th month, I got a call from the apartment complex. Liam was 2 weeks late on the rent. I called him, my heart pounding. "Oh crap, sorry, Erie. I just got totally swamped. I'll pay it tomorrow, I promise." He did. 2 months later, it happened again. This time, he was 3 weeks late, and the landlord was threatening eviction proceedings, which would go on my record. I ended up paying the $1,000 rent myself, just to protect my credit. Liam was profusely apologetic. "I'll pay you back every penny, I swear. This new job just has a weird pay cycle." I never saw that $1,000 again. The late payment notice still showed up on my credit report, dragging my pristine score down by 30 points. It was a black mark I couldn't erase, a permanent scar from a wound inflicted by my own family. It cost me nothing, my mother had said, but it had cost me my peace of mind and 30 points of my financial future. Another entry, another debit. The bank was getting fuller. Prafor. The co-signing incident should have been my final lesson, the one that taught me to build impenetrable walls around my finances. But the pull of family obligation is a powerful, insidious thing. A few years passed. I was in my late 20s, and my career was taking off. I had moved into my own place, a small but sunny 1-bedroom apartment that was my sanctuary. I had a promotion at my design firm, and for the first time, I had a significant amount of money in my savings account. I was diligently saving for a down payment on a small condo. It was my biggest dream, a piece of the world that was truly, unequivocally mine. Liam, in a shocking turn of events, had found a new passion: entrepreneurship. He had a revolutionary idea for a tech startup. The name was grandiose and vague: Go-Go Gadgetry Inc. The business plan, which he enthusiastically explained to me over dinner, a dinner I paid for, seemed to consist mostly of buzzwords like synergy, disruption, and first-mover advantage. He had designed a sleek logo and printed impressive-looking business cards. The only thing he was missing was capital. This led inevitably to the largest and most audacious withdrawal from the Favor Bank to date. He didn't even bother going through our parents this time. He came directly to me. He took me out for coffee and laid out his pitch, his eyes gleaming with the fervor of a true believer. He needed $10,000. Just a seed loan, he called it, to build a prototype and secure a patent. He showed me a wildly optimistic spreadsheet projecting millions in revenue within 3 years. "Eerie, this is it," he said, leaning forward, his voice low and urgent. "This is the one. I can feel it. You get in on the ground floor and I'll pay you back double in a year. No, triple. You'll be an investor." I was skeptical. I had seen this movie before. "Liam, I don't know anything about tech startups. It's a huge risk. And that's my house money." He deployed his ultimate weapon, a potent cocktail of shared nostalgia and future promises. "Remember when we were kids and we said we'd always have each other's backs? This is me asking you to have my back. I'm not asking mom and dad because their finances are a mess. You're the smart one, the successful one. If you believe in me, then I know I can do it." He had framed it perfectly. It wasn't just about money. It was a test of faith, a test of sisterly love. My friend Sarah, when I told her about it later that day, was apoplectic. "Are you insane?" she'd shrieked down the phone. "Do not give him that money. Iris, he is not an investment. He is a black hole. Throwing money into a black hole is not a sound financial strategy." I defended him, a familiar script I had grown tired of performing. But he seemed so serious this time. What if this is the thing that finally works for him? Can I really be the person who stands in his way? Sarah sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. "He's counting on you saying that. That's his entire business model." But I was still caught in the trap, still hoping that one grand gesture of support would be the one that finally earned me the appreciation I craved. I wrote up a simple loan agreement on a piece of paper, stating the amount and a repayment schedule to begin in 1 year. We both signed it. It felt official, businesslike. I transferred the $10,000 to his account, a nauseating click of a mouse that felt like pushing my own dream off a cliff. For 6 months, I got breathless updates about promising meetings and potential partnerships. Then the updates became less frequent. My texts asking how things were going were met with short, evasive answers. After a year, the date of the first scheduled repayment came and went. I sent him a gentle reminder text. It went unanswered. I called him. It went to voicemail. When I finally got him on the phone, his voice was flat, defeated. "Yeah, it didn't work out," he mumbled. "We had some supply chain issues." There was no mention of the loan, no apology, no plan for repayment. It was simply gone. When I pressed him gently about the money, he got defensive. "God, Iris, can you give me a break? I just lost my whole company. A little sympathy would be nice instead of hounding me for money." He had managed to flip the script, positioning me as the callous debt collector and himself as the wounded victim. That $10,000 was never spoken of again. It was a ghost that sat between us, a monument to my own foolish hope. It was the flagship entry in the favor bank, a loss so significant that it set my own dreams back by years. And all the while, I was also becoming the family's social director. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter was hosted at my small apartment. I would spend hundreds of dollars on groceries and spend days cooking and cleaning, only for my family to arrive, criticize the turkey for being a little dry, and leave me with a mountain of dishes and a lingering sense of being used. I remember one Thanksgiving particularly vividly. Liam had just started dating Chloe, a woman who seemed to be sculpted from pure ambition and expensive moisturizer. They arrived an hour late, and Chloe spent the entire meal scrolling through her phone, occasionally showing my mother pictures of outrageously priced handbags. Then, right before dessert, Liam clinked his glass for an announcement. It wasn't an engagement, not yet, but an announcement that they were seriously considering getting engaged soon, which effectively turned the rest of my holiday into a referendum on their future happiness. They left early to meet friends for drinks, leaving me, my parents, and a kitchen that looked like a bomb had gone off. As I stood at the sink, hands submerged in greasy water, my father patted me on the back. "You throw a great party, honey," he said. "It's so good you're here to do all this. Your mother's back just can't take it anymore. I smiled, a tight, brittle thing. I was a utility, a convenience, and the balance in the favor bank was growing at an alarming rate. The official engagement announcement came 6 months later, and of course, it happened at my apartment. I had been asked to host a small family dinner to celebrate Liam's recent promotion, a vague but important-sounding title at a company I was sure would be defunct within a year. I'd spent all day making lasagna from scratch, my mother's favorite, and a fancy salad with toasted pecans, something Chloe had once mentioned she liked. They arrived in a flurry of excitement, Chloe holding out her left hand with a theatrical flourish. On her finger was a diamond that could have its own gravitational pull. It was enormous, ostentatious, and I knew with a sickening certainty that Liam had not paid for it with money from his new job. "We're getting married," Chloe squealed, while Liam beamed, looking like a lottery winner. My parents were ecstatic, hugging them both, weeping tears of joy. I offered my congratulations, which felt hollow in my own ears. As the initial excitement died down, the conversation turned to the wedding itself. This was not going to be a simple church and reception affair. Chloe, it turned out, had a vision. "I've always dreamed of a destination wedding," she announced, her eyes sparkling. Not some cheesy beach thing, something epic, an experience. She pulled out her phone and started swiping through photos of a breathtakingly luxurious resort in Bali. Infinity pools bled into the turquoise ocean. Thatched roof villas were nestled in. Lush jungle. It looked less like a hotel and more like a private paradise for billionaires. "It's a week-long, all-inclusive package," she explained. "We'd all fly out, spend the week relaxing and celebrating, and then have the ceremony at sunset on the final day. Can you imagine?" I could imagine. I could imagine the cost. I felt a cold premonition creep up my spine. My mother, completely swept up in the fantasy, clasped her hands together. "Oh, it's a dream. Liam, Chloe, it's just perfect. Of course, we'll all have to chip in to make this dream a reality for you two. It's a once-in-a-lifetime moment." As she said, "We'll all," her eyes flickered to me, a brief but heavily weighted glance. The lasagna sat heavy in my stomach. The opening salvo had been fired. I didn't have to wait long for the main assault. The next afternoon, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was light and breezy, a tone she always adopted when she was about to ask for something unreasonable. "Hi, honey, I'm still just floating on air from last night. Aren't you so excited?" "It's great, Mom. They seem very happy." "They are! And you know, I was thinking about their wedding gift," she said, getting straight to the point. "We were talking, and it seems so silly to buy them a toaster or towels when what they really need is help making this incredible experience happen. We know you've been saving so diligently for your condo, and we thought, well, your real gift could be helping them fund the dream." I held my breath. What did you have in mind, Mom?" She named a number. It was $15,000. The blood drained from my face. It was almost the entirety of my savings. It was my down payment. It was my future. "Mom," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "I can't. That's everything I have. That's my house fund." The breeziness in her tone vanished, replaced by a sharp edge of impatience. "Oh, Iris, don't be so dramatic. A house can wait. This is your brother's happiness we're talking about. It's a wedding. It only happens once. You can't be selfish about this." Selfish. The word hit me like a slap. I had spent my entire life being the opposite of selfish, and it was the first accusation they threw at me the moment I drew a line. I was non-committal on the phone. "I have to think about it, Mom." But my non-answer was taken as a call to arms. The full-court press began. It was a sophisticated, multi-pronged attack on my boundaries. Chloe started a group text chain called Bali Dream Team, where she would post daily updates, photos of the resort, links to bridesmaid dresses, and cheerful messages like, "Counting down the days, can't wait to celebrate with our favorite people." My parents would reply with gushing enthusiasm and post their own pledges to the fund. Exaggerated amounts they almost certainly couldn't afford. designed to shame me into participating. Liam called me, his voice oozing with the practiced charm that had worked on me for 30 years. Come on, Irie. It's going to be the best week of our lives. A real family vacation. We'll make so many amazing memories. I need you there, and I need your help to make it perfect for Chloe. You know how much this means to her. He was framing my financial contribution as an essential component of his love for his fiancée. My money was the proof of his devotion. However, I tried to hold the line. I dodged the calls. I gave vague, non-committal answers in the group chat. I sent a text to Liam saying, I am so happy for you both. I can't contribute to the Bali fund, but I would love to buy you a meaningful gift from your registry. This was a mistake. It was like throwing a rock at a hornet's nest. The politeness vanished, and the raw entitlement was laid bare. The ambush came on a Thursday evening. My phone rang, and it was my mother. When I answered, I heard other voices in the background. Iris, I have you on speakerphone. Your father is here, and Liam and Chloe are with us. My stomach plummeted. It was an intervention, or rather, an inquisition. We just don't understand your attitude about this, my mother began, her voice dripping with disappointment. We are all so hurt. Liam's voice cut in, sharp and accusatory. I don't get it, Iris. What is your problem? Are you jealous? Is that it? Are you jealous that I found someone and I'm getting married and you're still single in your little apartment? The accusation hung in the air, stunning me with its cruelty. It was designed to hit me where I was most vulnerable, to frame my financial prudence as pathetic loneliness. Before I could even respond, Chloe's high, sharp voice joined in. I told you, Liam. She's never really been supportive of our relationship. She thinks we're frivolous. I bet she thinks my ring is tacky. I froze. A few weeks prior, in a private conversation, I had admitted to Sarah that I thought the ring was a bit much, a comment I thought was safe within the vault of our friendship. Liam must have wheedled it out of Sarah's well-meaning but occasionally too talkative boyfriend. They were using my private confidences as ammunition. It felt like a profound betrayal. My father, who usually stayed out of the direct line of fire, chimed in with his signature move, expressing deep paternal sorrow. This is a sad day, Iris. You're letting money come between you and your brother. You're tearing this family apart. That was it. That was the phrase that broke me. You're tearing this family apart. After decades of being the glue, the spackle, the load-bearing wall holding the whole fragile structure together, I was being accused of being the wrecking ball. All because I refused to hand over my life savings for a week-long party in Bali. The years of resentment, the unpaid loans, the co-signed lease, the blamed for music box, the thankless holidays. It all coalesced into a single point of cold, hard clarity. The favor bank wasn't just a metaphor in my head anymore. It was real, and it was deeply in the red. A strange calm washed over me. The hurt and the anger receded, replaced by an icy resolve. I was done. I let them finish their tirade, a chorus of complaints about my selfishness, my jealousy, my negativity. I listened to it all, the words washing over me. When they finally fell silent, expecting my apology, my capitulation, I took a deep breath. You've given me a lot to think about, I said, my voice even and steady. I need to go. I hung up the phone before they could say another word. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound. The war was over. I had lost every battle. But I was about to win, in a way they could never possibly anticipate. The idea began as a flicker. I was sitting at my desk, my fingers hovering over my keyboard, staring at my online banking portal, the number in my savings account. The one I had guarded so fiercely seemed to glow on the screen. It was my number. It was my work. It was my future. And they had tried to take it, not with a gun, but with a hug. Not with a threat, but with the language of love. The injustice of it was so profound it was almost elegant. I thought about my job as a graphic designer. I spent my days organizing information, creating narratives through images and text, making things clear and beautiful. And it hit me. I wouldn't just tell them no, I would show them why. I would create a document, an accounting. I would open the books on the favor bank for a final audit. Paragraph 5, I started that night. I pulled an old shoebox from the back of my closet, a messy archive of my life's important papers. I wasn't a meticulous record keeper, but I was a sentimental one. I found the flimsy carbon copy of the co-signed lease for Liam's old apartment. I found old credit card statements from years of hosting holidays, the grocery bills highlighted, totaling thousands of dollars over the years. I even found the naive, handwritten loan agreement for Go-Go Gadgetry Inc., signed by both of us, a relic of my own foolishness. The more I dug, the more I found. I didn't have every receipt, but I had memories, and my memory was long. I opened a new file on my computer, a spreadsheet. I started making a list, a chronological accounting of my generosity. Item: 1 porcelain music box. Value: sentimental. Cost: 1 week of grounding and the establishment of a lifelong precedent. Item: college fund withdrawal for 1998 Ford Escort. Value: $3,000 in 1998 dollars. Adjusted for inflation, that was closer to $5,500. Payments received: $0. Item: babysitting services. Spring break 2005. 5 days, approximately 120 hours. At a conservative rate of $15 per hour, that was $1,800. I deducted the $120 I was actually paid. New total, $1,680, plus a notation. Cost includes near failure of design 101 final project. Item: co-signed lease, 123 Oak Street. 1 month's rent paid by me, $1,000. Damage to credit score, 30 points. I couldn't put a price on that, so I just wrote, incalculable. Item: seed loan for Go-Go Gadgetry. Inc. Value, $10,000. I calculated a modest 5% annual interest, compounded over the years that had gone unpaid. The total was staggering. The list went on and on. Airport runs, moving assistance, resume editing, hosting 17 Thanksgivings, 12 Christmases, and countless birthdays. I estimated the costs conservatively, for food, for wine, for my time. Each entry was a small cut, but together they represented a hemorrhage of my time, my money, and my emotional energy. The spreadsheet filled up, the final number at the bottom growing into something monstrous. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the sheer, undeniable volume of it all. It was the physical proof that I was not the selfish one. For the next 3 days, I worked feverishly. I didn't go to work, I called in sick. I didn't answer my phone, which was ringing incessantly with calls from my family. I was in a creative frenzy, fueled by righteous anger and 2 pots of coffee a day. I wasn't just making a list. I was designing a masterpiece of passive aggression. I decided it would be a book, a beautifully bound hardcover photo album. I sourced the materials from my favorite art supply store, a heavy leatherette cover in a deep, unforgiving black, thick archival paper, and gold foil for the lettering. On the cover, I embossed the title in elegant serif font, The Favor Bank, A History. Each page was a separate entry. I scanned the old photos, the documents, the receipts. I designed each layout with care, like it was my most important professional project. The page for the car loan had a picture of a teenage Liam, grinning proudly next to his convertible, his arms slung around a girl I didn't even remember. Beside it, a clean, crisp graphic, showing the withdrawal from a facsimile of my old passbook savings account. The page for the co-signed lease showed a snippet of the agreement with my signature circled in red. The page for the startup loan was stark, just a copy of our signed note on one side, and on the other, the single, bolded number of the amount owed, including interest. For the holidays, I created montages of photos, happy family moments that belied the fact that I was the one who had funded and orchestrated them. Below each montage was an itemized list of costs: turkey, $75, wine, $120, side dishes, $200, cleaning services, self-provided, priceless. It was petty, yes, but it was also true. Every page was a testament to a sacrifice I had been told was simply my duty. The final pages were my masterwork. I designed a 2-page spread to look exactly like a high-end official bank statement. The letterhead read, "The Bank of Iris, a subsidiary of Familial Obligation, LLC." Down the left side was an itemized summary of the major financial withdrawals, with the final, shocking total at the bottom. On the right side, under payments and debits, there was only one entry. I wrote, "In-kind payment request, one all-inclusive gift to Bali Wedding Fund." The amount next to it was the $15,000 they had demanded. I then created a final line, "Balance forward." I subtracted the $15,000 from the total amount they owed me. The result was still a significant 5-figure number, but I wasn't sending them a bill. I was sending them a message. So with a flourish of my pen, I created one last entry below it. A goodwill write-off. I zeroed the whole thing out. The final balance, in a large bold font at the bottom of the page, read $0.00. Beneath it, on the pristine white space of the final page, I took a black fountain pen and wrote a simple 2-sentence note. "Account paid in full. The Favor Bank is now permanently closed. I wish you a lifetime of happiness that you can fund yourselves." I let the ink dry. I closed the book. It felt heavy in my hands, solid and real. I wrapped it in gold tissue paper and placed it in a sleek black gift box. I tied it with a silver ribbon. It looked expensive. It looked like a gift. The next morning, I drove to a premium courier service, the kind that corporations use for sensitive documents. I paid extra for same-day delivery and signature confirmation. I addressed it to my parents' house, knowing that Liam and Chloe were scheduled to be there all afternoon for an intensive wedding planning session. I went home, opened my laptop, and watched the tracking number. At 2:17 p.m., the status updated. Delivered. Signed for by B. Miller, my mother. It was done. The bomb had been delivered. Now, all I had to do was wait for the explosion. Professor. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I had invited Sarah over for moral support. We sat in my living room, the gift-wrapped book's phantom presence sitting between us. My phone was on the coffee table, face up, a dormant volcano. Sarah, who had been my co-conspirator and chief cheerleader throughout the album's creation, was vibrating with a mixture of terror and glee. "I can't believe you actually did it," she whispered, her eyes wide. "You are a legend, an absolute stone-cold legend." They're probably having to read it out loud to each other because their eyes have popped out of their heads. "They're going to call," I said, my own voice surprisingly steady. "My mom first. She'll be crying. Then Liam. He'll be yelling. Then my dad. He'll be disappointed." It was a pattern as predictable as the seasons. We waited. Every creak of the building, every siren in the distance, made us jump. An hour passed, then another. The tension was becoming unbearable. "Maybe they're just quietly reflecting on their behavior," Sarah offered. Without a shred of conviction, I snorted. "Not a chance. They're strategizing. They're building a narrative where I'm the villain." At 4:32 p.m., exactly 2 hours and 15 minutes after delivery, the volcano erupted. My phone lit up with my mother's picture. I took a deep breath, picked it up, and pressed the speakerphone button. "Hello, Mom." For a moment, there was only the sound of ragged, furious breathing. Then her voice, not weepy as I had predicted, but a choked, venomous hiss. "What is this? What is this poison you sent to my house?" It's my wedding gift, I said calmly. Sarah's jaw dropped. I wanted to make sure you got it ahead of time. A gift? She shrieked, her voice cracking with fury. This is an attack. You've made a list. You've tallied up. Love? You've put a price tag on being a family. No, Mom, I said, and the clarity in my own voice surprised me. You did. You all put a price tag on my love, and you decided it was $15,000 for a trip to Bali. I just looked at the historical data and realized I had already overpaid. Consider this a receipt for services rendered. There was a scuffling sound, and then Liam's voice, raw with rage, exploded from the speaker. You think this is funny? You sick, twisted, you've always been jealous of me. Always. You couldn't stand that I was happy, that I have Chloe, so you had to do this, to try and ruin it all. He was shouting now, spitting out half-formed accusations that dated back to childhood. A broken toy, a tattled secret, things I hadn't thought of in decades. He was throwing everything at the wall, hoping something would stick, hoping to wound me enough to make me backtrack. The book isn't about jealousy, Liam, I said, my voice still even. It's about math. The numbers are all there. If you dispute any of the charges, I have the documentation. This seemed to enrage him further. I could hear Chloe in the background, her voice a high-pitched wail. She ruined it. She ruined everything. How are we supposed to have a wedding now? She's trying to humiliate us. And there it was. Chloe's panicked cry wasn't about family or love or hurt feelings. It was about the public image, the money. My book hadn't just presented an emotional invoice. It had threatened the funding for their extravagant fantasy. Then my father was on the line. He didn't yell. His voice was low and heavy with his trademark weaponized sorrow. Iris, I never thought you were capable of such cruelty, such pettiness. We're your family. We love you. I know you do, Dad, I said. And for the first time, a tremor of emotion entered my voice. But your love has always come with a surcharge. It was always conditional on what I could provide. A family is supposed to be a source of mutual support, not a unilateral line of credit. My account is closed. The bank is insolvent. I listened as they tried to argue, to guilt, to shame me. But it was like listening to a broadcast from a distant planet. Their words had no power over me anymore. The book had set me free. It had taken all the unspoken resentment, all the quiet pain, and given it form and weight. It was real. It was undeniable. I let my father trail off into a wounded silence. I have to go now, I said. Goodbye. Before they could respond, I ended the call. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was the aftershock of a seismic shift. I looked at Sarah. Her face was a mask of awe. Wow, she breathed. I picked up my phone again. I opened my family's contact cards. My mother, my father. Liam. One by one, I pressed the block contact button. A profound final silence descended. Just before I blocked Liam, I sent one last text message. A final closing statement. My gift was the truth. My decision is final. Please respect it. Do not contact me. Then I turned my phone off completely. I looked at Sarah, and a tear, one single, hot tear, slid down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of release. Decades of pressure, of bending, of accommodating, all vanishing in an instant. Sarah wrapped her arms around me. They're not mad because you wrote it all down, she said, her voice soft but fierce. They're mad because you kept the receipts. In the weeks that followed, the silence from my family was absolute. It was a strange, hollow feeling at first. I kept expecting a knock on the door, an ambush at my office, a letter filled with vitriol. But there was nothing. My life, which had been so entangled with their needs and their dramas, was suddenly, starkly my own. I learned through a cousin, a kind soul who had always remained neutral in our family's politics, that the Bali wedding was off. The grand week-long experience had been canceled, apparently without my $15,000 gift. and with my parents likely unable to deliver on their own grand pledges. The whole fantasy had collapsed. They ended up getting married a few months later at a local country club. It was, I was told, a nice but visibly scaled-back affair. I saw a few pictures on social media, posted by my cousin. Liam and Chloe stood under a white gazebo, smiling for the camera. They looked happy enough, but there was a tightness around their smiles. I felt a brief, complicated pang, not regret, not jealousy, but a deep, mournful sadness for the relationship we could have had. The one that had been smothered under the weight of expectation and entitlement. I was, of course, not invited. My name was not mentioned. To them, I simply ceased to exist. And the most surprising part, it was a relief. The money I had saved, the money that had been the catalyst for this entire revolution, now felt sacred. A few months after their wedding, I took that money and I did exactly what I had always dreamed of doing. I put a down payment on a small but perfect condo in a quiet, leafy neighborhood. The day I got the keys was one of the happiest of my life. I walked through the empty rooms, the sunlight streaming through the windows, and the silence was no longer hollow. It was peaceful. It was mine. I spent the next year making that place my own. I painted the walls a soft, calming green. I bought a comfortable sofa, a real dining table, and I started a small herb garden on my balcony. Every piece of furniture, every book on the shelf, was chosen by me and paid for by me. It was a sanctuary I had built not just with money, but with the courage to say no. My life found a new rhythm, one that wasn't dictated by emergency phone calls or obligatory holiday hosting. I reconnected with old friends. I took a pottery class. I adopted a scruffy terrier mix from a local shelter. I was building a life, not just a credit score. Then, almost a year to the day after I sent the book, a letter arrived. It was in a plain white envelope, addressed to me in my mother's familiar, looping handwriting. My heart did a strange little flip-flop. I opened it with a sense of detached curiosity. The letter was short, the words stilted and carefully chosen. It was not the effusive, tear-stained apology I might have once craved. It was something far more complex, and in its own way, more telling. It spoke of hurt on both sides, and how things were said in anger. It mentioned that Liam missed his big sister, and that the holidays weren't the same without me. It was a masterclass in non-apology, an attempt to rewrite history and test the waters, to see if the door I had slammed shut had perhaps swung open a crack. There was no acknowledgement of the book, no mention of the money, no recognition of the decades of imbalance. It was an invitation to return to the status quo, perhaps with a few cosmetic changes. It was a test to see if a year of peace had made me soft, if the guilt had crept back in. I read the letter twice, then placed it on my new dining table. The old Iris would have been a wreck. She would have agonized, cried, and probably called back, ready to forgive and forget, just to have her family back on any terms. But I wasn't the old Iris anymore. I had closed that bank. I had audited the books. I looked around my quiet, sunlit condo, at my sleeping dog, at the half-finished pottery mug on my counter. I looked at the life I had built from the ashes of my old one, and I felt nothing but a profound sense of peace. I had finally learned that my grandmother was right. My spine was a beautiful thing. It had been designed to hold me up, and I was finally standing straight and tall on my own 2 feet.